which means that any organism with sufficient mass and cognitive capability is a potential vector. Is something wrong?
No, nothing.
So now we talk.
Shall we?
Could have been asking questions the whole time, Chief.
Oh, it's gonna get worse.
Oh, hello.
Well, if he'd asked questions, we wouldn't get this
my
one.
usefulness to this particular endeavor has come to an end. Protocol does not allow units with my classification to perform a task as important as the reunification of the index with the core. That final step is reserved for you, Reclaimer. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Oh, really?
Cortana.
I've spent the last 12 hours cooped up in here watching you toady about, helping that thing get set to slit our throats.
Hold on now. He's a friend.
Oh, I didn't realize. He's your pal, is he? Your chum? Do you have any idea what that bastard almost made you do?
Yes. Activate Halo's defenses and destroy the Flood, which is why we brought the index to the control center.
You mean this?
A construct in the core? That is absolutely unacceptable.
Sod off!
What impertinence! I shall purge you at once!
You sure that's a good idea?
How dare you? Oh!
Do what? I have the index. You can just float and sputter.
Enough! The Flood is spreading. If we activate Halo's defenses, we can wipe them out.
You have no idea how this ring works, do you? Why the Forerunners built it? Halo doesn't kill Flood. It kills their food. Humans, Covenant, whatever. We're all equally edible. The only way to stop the Flood is to starve them to death. And that's exactly what Halo is designed to do. Wipe the galaxy clean of all sentient life. You don't believe me? Ask him.
Is it true?
More or less. Technically, this installation's pulse has a maximum effective radius of 25,000 light years. But once the others follow suit, this galaxy will be quite devoid of life. Or at least any life with sufficient biomass to sustain the Flood.
Couldn't have asked that question sooner.
I mean, how couldn't you?
Left out that little detail, did he?
We have followed outbreak containment procedure to the letter. You were with me each step of the way as we managed this crisis.
Chief, I'm picking up movement.
Why would you hesitate to do what you've already done?
We need to go right now.
Last time you asked me, if it were my choice, would I do it? Having had considerable time to ponder your query, my answer has not changed. There is no choice. We must activate the ring.
Get us out of here.
If you are unwilling to help, I will simply find another. Still, I must have the index. Give your construct to me, or I will be forced to take her from you.
That's not going to happen.
So be it. Save his head. Dispose of the rest.
12 hours we were away. 12 hours
question
between assault on the control room, 343 Guilty Spark, and the library, and now. And we didn't get any of that information until someone else told us to ask the question.
We can't let the Monitor activate Halo.
So welcome
we have
back,
to stop him. We have
kids.
to destroy
Yes, welcome
Halo.
back.
According to my analysis of the available data, I believe the best course of action is somewhat drastic. An explosion of sufficient size will help destabilize the ring, and will cut through a number of primary systems. We need to trigger a detonation on a large scale, however. A starship's fusion reactors going critical would do the job.
Farewell.
I'm going to search
Chain
what's left of the
reactions.
Covenant battlement
Yeah,
and see if
man.
I can locate the Pillar of Autumn's crash
They're
site.
fun.
If the ship's fusion reactors are still relatively intact, we can use them to destroy Halo.
So, well, I try to. Oh, I have perished.
According to my analysis
All right,
of
let's,
the available
try that
data,
again,
I
huh?
believe the best
Yeah,
course
let's
of
try that
action
again.
is somewhat
So,
risky. An explosion of sufficient
there it is, the
size
final
will help
enemy of the
destabilize
game
the ring,
to be
and
introduced,
will
the
cut through a
Sentinels.
number of primary systems. We need to trigger a detonation
Really not
on
much
a
of a
large
trick.
scale,
All they do is
however.
hover around and laze you.
Starship's
Yeah, they're
fusion
vulnerable to
reactor, so
plasma.
Cooperative would do the job.
I will give them one thing.
I'm going to search what's left of the Covenant
They
battle
use a
net to see if I
laser,
can locate
they
the
don't
Pillar of
immediately
Autumn's
hit
crash
you,
site.
like, say, an
If
enemy
the
using a
ship's
hit scan
fusion
weapon.
reactors are
Their
still
lasers
relatively
strike the
intact,
ground and then
we can
sweep,
use them to
giving you
destroy
time
Halo.
to, you know, prioritize them as a target and prevent damage.
Yeah.
Curious, isn't it? That's, you know, that's a pretty good design for an enemy that has a projectile that travels instantly. So hey, you know, the library is not good, it's a bad stage, but you could at least make the argument, hey, at least it's a unique location, right?
Yep.
Well,
So,
we're back here, and we're doing this stage in
Yeah.
reverse.
So
Haven't
exactly,
located the
we are
crash
about
site.
to play.
We need to buy some time.
But you haven't
Use the
located the
monitor
crash
or the
site?
Sentinels find a way to activate Halo's final weapon without the index. The machinery in these canyons are Halo's primary firing mechanisms. They consist of 3 phase pulse generators that amplify Halo's signal and allow it to fire deep into space. The power levels are enormous. I can't even begin to calculate the pulse's range. So, if we damage or destroy these generators, the monitor will need to repair them before Halo can be used. That should buy us some time. I'm marking the location of the nearest pulse generator with a nav point. We need to move in and neutralize the device.
You don't know where the Pillar of Autumn's crash site is? You intercepted the Covenant talking about when they had located it, and you didn't know where it is? What?
So here's the thing. Cortana there is expositing at us, right? She has, in that one exchange, given us more information about anything on this fucking ring than the entire rest of the game has given us. Yeah?
Yep.
So, when Reckon and I talk about, you know, add one line of dialogue,
I
right?
thought I could make it.
We've said that once or twice. Add one line. You know, ask a question, etc. We literally mean exactly what Cortana was doing right there. She's with you, in your helmet, in your ear. She has the capability to just give you context, right? She never does until now. And only because, like, the ticking clock is running. So, the narrative literally has to put a gun to her head to get her to give you anything more than go here, do this. So now we know what this canyon is. It's the primary firing mechanism for the Halo.
Yeah. And I want to talk about Ringworld again, alright?
Let's go for it.
Can't see my grin. So, in Ringworld, the Ringworld was not a weapon. It was... Calling it a zoo is a little reductive, but it was basically a refugee shelter. It was incomprehensibly massive, and it actually was discovered by the main characters at one point, I'm dead again, that it contained full-scale recreations of the land masses of multiple planets that they knew, and some that they didn't. I put myself in a terrible position.
I shall rescue you with the worst weapon in the game.
And the reason for that is... who built the Ringworld?
The Pack Protectors.
The Pack Protectors. They're not who we are going to talk about, but the Pack Protectors is a name that I'll probably mention at some point, so just better to hear it now.
Yeah.
So back around many years ago in Ringworld world, there were these two races, interstellar, faring, very powerful empires who were at war with each other. One was called the Thrint, also known as the Slavers, and the Tnuktapun, who, if you have ever met Larry Niven, or if you are Larry Niven, you can tell me why I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's spelled weird, like this. So, Tnuktapun? Whatever. They were at war, And the reason for that is that the slavers were so named because they had a form of mind control they could exert upon enemy races. And the mind control was interesting because it was biologically perfect. It wasn't truly, like, conquer this person's mind and make them do something. It was tell their brain to do something, and every fiber of their very being will obey. For instance, an example of this is, at one point, a slaver is in a ship, and like a young slaver has just bitten the arm of another creature. And angry about this, you know, the slaver's like, stop doing that, don't damage our slaves. And then the slave returns to the thing that was bitten and commands it to stop bleeding. And what happens is that the muscles in the arm contract so much that it closes the blood vessels. And that's what I mean when I say biologically perfect mind control. So, the slavers, regardless of this fact, were losing the war.
How is unclear.
Let's get
Well,
on.
how is
An apple
explained
marks out target.
a variety of ways. The Bandersnatchy that some of the Tnuktapan created were actually non-sentient creatures. So the slavers can only mind control sapient and sentient creatures with like higher thought processes. So, you know, there's something. But the point is here, just making sure you're okay. The point is the slavers were losing. Oh, did you get tired of these rooms at all?
Oh, well, they're back.
They sure are. The slavers were losing, and they had an idea, a
That's the
solution.
pulse generator. The center core is the signal amplifier. That's what we need to shut down. We need to interrupt the pulse generator's energy stream. I've adjusted your shield system so that it will deliver an EMP burst to disrupt the generator, but you'll need to walk into the beam to trigger it. The EMP blast should neutralize the generator, but it will also drain your shields and leave you vulnerable until they recharge.
So, for those wondering, yes, this does affect both players. So anyway, the
Objective
slavers...
accomplished. The pulse generator has overloaded. Scanning. The generator's central core is offline. Well done.
were losing the war, and they created a solution to this. Their final weapon, as Cortana put it for the Halo. And their solution was to use the biological perfection of their mind control and tell their enemies to die, to kill themselves. Pretty easy solution, right? But the scale was a problem. They could only do it within a relatively short range, and that's the thing about the slavers. Their mind control was basically one-on-one, minus some like special cases and all that. So what they were going to do was they were going to build these amplification helmets and broadcast across key points all across the galaxy the command "die" to everywhere. And this was going to be known as Suicide Night. Suicide Night was a problem, because their enemies...
The second pulse generator is located in the adjacent canyon. Move out and I'll mark the target with a nav point when we get closer.
caught wind of their plan, and were trying to stop them by, destroying these amplifier helmets, which were like huge, giant ordeals that needed to be contained on space stations. So they weren't just like covert things that could be made. And what they were planning to do, once they had these helmets in place and were going to broadcast these signals, was then they were going to put themselves in stasis. So the people, the slavers, broadcasting the signal were going to have to sacrifice themselves to make Suicide Night happen, but just before that, the other slaver forces were going to hide themselves away in stasis fields to survive the radius of the blast. And then, what was
Enter
going to
that
happen
door. That's the way to the next canyon.
was that they had already reseeded some barren worlds with the genetic material of races they had already subjugated. So they were going to go in stasis for, a few millennia, come back to a repopulated galaxy, and start it all over again. When I said that Halo cribbed heavily from Larry Niven, I was not kidding. There are differences, obviously. Differences in the function of the ring world wasn't the weapon, but, the Flood aren't a conquering race, they're just a parasite. But the similarities exist, and they need to be highlighted, especially going forward. Thank you for listening to me.
But there's no but. They crib heavily from Niven, and I get the feeling that Niven is just kind of what they fall back on when they don't have a way to go forward, right? Because remember, we talked about how they had established that the ring was a weapon, but then they turned around and said that it was built to contain the Flood, and the implication that the Flood could have been the weapon, right? I have a feeling that there were a lot of heads in the writing room all conflicting on the direction of the game.
Yeah.
And because they're all Niven fans, they probably all just agreed to split the difference and go, alright, if we can't agree, we'll just do Niven.
Yeah, I'd take that bet. And obviously here now you get to see that not only are we still following arrows, but actually we're following them backwards. So...
It broke new ground.
And then further as to what the ring world actually was as far as being like a refugee center, the pack were trying to do a thing. Don't worry about it. That's not relevant. The relevant part I explained.
Yeah. They basically stole the motivation of a villain race from Niven's work, because my working theory is that they just couldn't agree on what the hell the Halo was for.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hilarious, because I get the feeling they couldn't agree because they didn't want to seem like they were ripping off Niven, only to then fall back on ripping off Niven.
And, if the Halo is a weapon made to generate a pulse to recite the anti-life equation or whatever, why does it have livable land on it? Why is that important? Why is that something they took into account?
We were told it was built to study and contain the Flood, but...
So are there, native species that were supposed to be on the ring that they were, consuming and they were studying the effects of that consumption? Because there aren't any, structures that we can see other than these Forerunner things that suggest a race was, allowed to be brought up here and then had the Flood unleashed upon it.
Of course, later games, maybe, right? I'm being generous, reckon. Maybe might imply that something like that was the case, possibly. But we're giving them credit, right? And like I keep saying, this game was written as they made it.
Yeah, and if you're oh no, it's a bastion against the people activating the rings. Well, no. One, it's the epicenter of the pulse, where it's going to be the strongest, and two, that's what the Ark is for. Sorry, I'm talking about Halo 3 now.
Yeah, but hey, that's something they would have come up with after the fact. Again, it's... I don't know, I don't want to accuse the people that wrote this game of not knowing what they're doing.
I will. I don't think anybody involved with this game knew what they were doing.
There were clearly talented people involved. It's just there's just issues, and it's clear there are issues. But people don't acknowledge them. Or the people that do are shouted down, right?
Yeah.
Because, hey, this game shipped how many million units? It must be all good. And, you know, in earlier episodes, we went over the extenuating circumstances that helped this game be successful. Like, it's alright. We just don't think it should have been as successful as it was. I'm happy it was, because we got better games.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like I'm bitter. It's like, oh, it shouldn't have done well. It's just kind of weird that it did.
And it's not that I'm calling Halo a bad game, I'm saying it turns into a bad game.
Oh, yes.
I think after the level 343 Guilty Spark, Halo is no longer winning any points.
It's, and it actually, by the end of it, it has lost a lot of the points it tallied up. Like,
yeah.
Between me and Reckon, there's differences of opinion on whether it breaks even or whether it goes into the red on the points, right?
Yeah.
I think that it breaks even, Reckon thinks it goes into the red.
Yeah, I don't think that Halo is a... I don't think Halo ends up as a good game.
So, but I've already stated in the previous episode that I'm willing to tolerate stuff that is a lot worse if I like the interesting parts of something. So, that's... But even then, I still say it breaks even, right? And that's not a good thing, right? It's...
Yeah. Like, low parts of Unreal were the middle decks of the ISV Cran, where it was, like, kind of hard to tell which way you're supposed to go, full of too many Scar just popping in. We killed, like, what, 70 Scar by the end of that level? It was rough. But, like, the good parts of Unreal are just so much more frequent and noticeable, and the bad parts are just like, oh, that's kind of weird. They don't, drag it down so far.
Like I used as my example before, right? Imagine if Zen in Half-Life was half of the game. Do you think Half-Life would be the critically acclaimed masterpiece that people say it is?
Nope.
Dunk on that. There are people that say Half-Life 1 Reckon is, you know Reckon's feelings. There are people that say Half-Life 1 is a bad game even as it is. Right?
I don't think it's a bad game.
No, I know you don't, but I'm saying there are people that say Half-Life 1 is a bad game, and their arguments are not unfounded, right? Like... And this is demonstrably worse, and people call it amazing.
Like, we are literally just going through the same levels again, but now there are Flood. That's not enough. That's not enough.
Halo has detractors. It has had detractors since day one. But, you know, they have only recently had their voice, hit even footing with the people that praise these games. Right? Like, it's... We could go on various online communities, the subreddits, the forums. We could do that today and talk about our axis to grind with the game. We'd probably see more people shouting us down than people going, you make some good points.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because, again, like we mentioned before, I don't care if you like Halo. I'm not saying you shouldn't like Halo. I like Halo as a series. But acknowledging that it has problems helps you better see what's good. It helps you realize more of what you personally like about it.
It makes the highs higher.
Yeah, it lets you think critically about the game you're playing. And that's not a bad thing. You should always think critically about things you like. Not like trying to examine why you like something and if you really should, but figure out what you like about it so you can seek out similar things, and so you can notice the things you like in other media.
I'm gonna wax philosophical real quick, right?
Go for it. I've talked enough.
I feel there is a problem with the mindset today where people perceive critical thinking as trying to find fault in something, and not as trying to figure out what is going on with something. And I think that's not a good mindset. Thinking critically about something is, you're not trying to prove it's bad or wrong. You're trying to figure out, is it good, is it bad, is it truth, is it lie? That's critical thinking, right? why are we doing the thing we're doing? Do we need to be doing the thing we're doing? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's as far as I'm going to dive into that. But I think that's it's worth saying, right? Please please criticize the things you love. I promise you, it will make them better in the long run.
Yeah. Criticism doesn't mean you don't like something.
No, God no. All right, so more of the exact same stage we did 2 levels ago.
Yep. Nothing different about it, except now they're a flood and it's a little darker out.
So it's worse.
Yep.
Oh god. And they're still ambushing us with flood, by the way. They're still putting like potatoes around corners and dudes with shotguns in close, you know, proximity.
Mm-hmm. There was that one guy with a rocket launcher earlier.
Yeah, saw him.
On the bridge. Luckily, all we have to do is find the arrows.
Yeah. Follow them in reverse, because we're literally doing the level in reverse. Yay!
You know why you don't
let's
go
take care of the next
up
boost generator.
the downslide? Not because it's, like, difficult, but because it's fucking boring. Like, maybe it's a nice challenge for you, but what do you accomplish? It's like you go down the slide and you're like, wee, slide, and then you're like, I'm gonna go back up it now. But then when you go back up it, you just go down the ladder. It's not like you climbed up the slide to go back down the slide.
So backtracking in video games. Let's get onto that one just real quick, and you know, I fell too far. I did not bounce.
No.
Backtracking in video games. There are video games that utilize backtracking through areas. Many video games that utilize it. Some well, others less well.
Mm-hmm.
The key to good backtracking, it's complex, right? There's a lot of things you've got to do.
Yeah, I got caught in that rock.
Backtracking, I think people will agree, even though this is a very nebulous statement, backtracking is something that you need to earn. You can't just throw it in because you want to save time and resources, right?
Yeah.
You've got to do more than just the thing in reverse. So the Resident Evil games, so the survival horror genre in general, is one of its hallmarks is backtracking. Same with the dungeon crawling genre, right? But the reason for that is because when you go back through the areas you've already been in, you get to access new ones, right? Spoiler alert, the rest of this game is recycled.
Yeah. It's
there isn't, yeah.
like backtracking in Symphony of the Night or Metroid, Metroid whatever, is not to like play half of the game again, although, you know, haha, upside down castle.
Yeah,
But
it's a means to an end. It's a means to reaching new areas and goals.
yeah, it's going somewhere else.
And we're not doing that because you'll see when we get to the end of the stage, but we're just doing the game in reverse now. Because, and again, you know, Bungie ran out of time and money. Not an excuse. Just a statement of like, an explanation of why. And if you run out of time and money, there's a lot of different ways you can handle it. And funnily enough, the Halo series actually provides examples of that. In itself. Halo 2 ran out of time and money.
It's way better than Halo 1. The ending is still weak, but
yeah. But I would honestly prefer the ending of Halo 2 to the second half of Halo 1.
absolutely.
You'll see what we're getting at when we get there. But yeah, like I would honestly prefer a good thing cut short than a good thing dragged out. And I think most people would agree with that.
I don't know why you ditched this ghost. There's a warthog though. Let's take that.
Yeah, well, that's why. Don't forget the free bullets and guns and what have yous.
Yeah, like, I guess I thought there was a rocket launcher there.
Oh no! No! Oh, that was rude.
Wow.
Yeah. See, that was fun. That was a funny little moment, right?
Yeah, Halo doesn't have totally garbage combat encounters.
Yeah, well, that's because that was a grunt throwing a grenade at me. That was a well-designed enemy doing something, you know, that's interesting, something that you have to react to, something unpredictable.
Yeah, and the Warthog was bait.
What do the Flood do? They run at you and just shoot you. Like,
Yep.
zombies as an enemy... See, we touched on, like, suddenly zombies being a thing in video games. Zombies as an enemy, right? You gotta do more than just the zombies, because all a zombie is gonna do is walk at you and try to hurt you, right? Even if you give them a gun, they're just gonna try and shoot you. Zombies are unintelligent, right? By definition. So... let's look at some video games that used zombies, right?
Sure.
Let's look at... an earlier game that used zombies. Resident Evil. I mentioned it before. It doesn't just have zombies. It has all kinds of, like, monsters and critters that are based on various sources, because they will have behaviors that are more unique than just shamble towards you and bite. An example of something that came later, Left 4 Dead. It has the regular infected, it has the special infected. Because just zombies isn't enough to make for an exciting game. Let's look at an exciting game that has just zombies. Dead Rising. Well, it doesn't just have zombies, you fight humans too. But Dead Rising, the primary threat is zombies, and the way that that is made interesting is that you are forced to engage with them against the clock, right? You've got to beat a clock, so you've got to make bad choices sometimes. That's the dynamic, interesting element of the Dead Rising series. The point is that you can't just have zombies, and Halo doesn't just have zombies, right? But there's nothing special about the Flood, and when the Flood are used, they're thrown at you in this game, right? I mentioned that there's one or two places where the Covenant are fighting the Flood, but they're rare and infrequent.
Yeah, we saw it right here.
Yeah.
It was
They're not
fine.
the rest of the game. So when the Covenant are reintroduced after you fight the Flood, you know, you get fun moments like that thing with the grenade. Because the Covenant do more than just try to hurt you.
Yeah.
By walking at you. But they don't really... Bungie don't really seem to get that in this game. They understand it later on. But in this game, the Flood primarily just come in big swarms. And it's just the Flood. Maybe there'll be some Covenant around because of incidental stuff, and you can get some fun stuff. You can get the interplay between the factions that people like to praise in this series. Very rarely. Oh, hey, look, a fuel rod gun.
Yeah, I saw one earlier. Grunts can now carry fuel rod guns. They're still grunts.
Yep.
So, let's take a look at this structure. We're up on, like, a landing pad. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
We flew up here with these Banshees. So there's this. It looks like an unfinished building that's supposed to have an elevator in it down to the ground floor, which would be nice because if somehow both of these Banshees get destroyed, there's no way up here and the level is effectively soft-locked.
So hey, soft locks. It's interesting that you bring that up because having a situation in your shipped like gold final products that you're selling to people, having a situation where the game soft locks until you hit a restart at a checkpoint, that's like really amateur hour shit, right?
I mean, it's not unique. It's certainly an issue in a lot of games.
Games have the issue, but it's universally frowned upon. It's considered an amateur show, right? Soft locks are not good. Generally, you want to not have them in your game, right? Unless, like, your game has a very specific kind of design to it. But I don't know. If you're deliberately putting soft locks in a game, it's not a game I'm interested in thinking about.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's the same.
But that's... I bring it up to call attention to it because, hey, let's shovel more evidence onto the pile of they rushed this out the door.
Yeah, like literally
Right.
just putting an elevator there would have fixed it. And otherwise, it's just a featureless room.
And from the look of it, that was probably the intent, and they probably literally ran out of time.
Yeah. And like
Hey,
the Banshees
if-
being destroyed isn't that
Yeah.
far-fetched of an issue to have, because there are hunters there, there are elites throwing stuff at you,
Right.
there's a shade turret, the Wraith, yeah, like, what happens if you just get unlucky and the Banshee blows up?
That's it. Pulse generator
So,
overloaded. One more to go.
Hey, if you work at Bungie, if you worked on this stage and you know what the deal with that like little not elevator thing is, let us know. Send us a message. I would like to know if that was intentional or if you actually did run out of time. Because, you know. Also, yeah, kind of been dumping on you guys, but no hard feelings. You got to admit you kind of phoned in the second half of this game.
Yep.
You're dead, huh?
I'm super dead. I killed
Alright.
stuff behind me and then turned forward and then something jumped out of the vent behind me.
Excellent. Alright, I hope I'm going the right way. I'm probably not going the right way. There are dead bodies here. Do we go back out the way we came? We don't.
Yeah.
We keep.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, we do. Okay. See, I'm already forgetting what I'm supposed to do.
Follow the arrows, Skelsor. Don't
But
don't
first
use
we
any
were
thought.
following
Follow the arrows.
But we were following them in reverse, and now we're following them in forwards. Oh, it's
I've
just.
located the Pillar of Autumn. She put down 1,200 kilometers upspin. Energy readings show her fusion reactors are still powered up.
How did you locate her? You
Systems
said
on
you
the Pillar of
hadn't.
Autumn have fail-safes even I can't override without authorization from the captain. We'll need to find him, or his neural implants, to start the fusion core detonation. One
If only he
target
hadn't been
remaining.
captured.
Let's take care of the final pulse generator. That tunnel leads to the next section of canyon. The final pulse generator we need to destroy is through there.
So hey, we alluded to this before, but yeah, now we're literally gonna fly light attack aircraft through one of these tunnels. So their purpose is some sort of defensive structure. Out the window. I just got rocketed. Quite
So did I. I
severely.
tried backing up.
The systems
So
on the Pillar of Autumn
okay,
have
we've already heard
fail-safes
this dialogue.
even
I'm
I
gonna talk
can't
over and
override
give a shit.
without authorization from
Yep.
the captain.
So
We'll need to find
Cortana
him, or
just
his neural
located the Pillar of
implants,
Autumn.
to start the fusion
She
core
was in
detonation.
a fucking
One
supercomputer
target
for
remaining.
12
Let's take
hours
care of
and
the final
couldn't do
pulse
it.
generator.
The Covenant fed her the location. She knew they had
That
it.
tunnel
She
leads to
couldn't
the next
find it.
section of canyon. The
She's
final
in our
pulse
head.
generator we
Does
need
our-
to destroy is
Why
through
does our
there.
suit have the abilities to find out where the Pillar of Autumn's crash site is? Like, I guess we have GPS enabled or something, but like, why is this what lets her do it? Why hasn't she done it before? Why didn't she do it any other time you were wandering around the wilderness?
Well, because it's because nobody needed to know where the Pillar of Autumn was until they decided that was how the ring was going to be destroyed.
You know what's
So-
awesome? Giving these light-colored enemies against a light-colored background a weapon that from a distance you can't tell they have.
Oh, this back half is a real mess.
So yeah, nobody needed to know where the Pillar of Autumn was until right now, and yup, that's why.
So now Cortana has new powers as the plot demands. That's not a trick in their bag of tricks that they're gonna toss out anytime soon. And I'm not just talking about Halo 1 there.
Yep. Get ready for some stuff.
It's this room again, except less interesting because we're on foot.
Yeah, we don't have a tank, and the only enemies we fight literally get spawned beneath our feet.
Oh, they do this jumping lunge.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's not great. So hey, suddenly zombies. I mean, we got nothing. We got nothing more interesting to talk about right now because we've literally been in this room and discussed it before. We've talked about the flood. What are some other video game cliches? Let's bring back the Halo ruined FPS thing. How about that?
I don't really know if there's much more ground to cover. We already got the 2-weapon limit and regenerating health.
Well, you know, we can talk about all the shooters that tried to do vehicles and just didn't do it as well.
That's true. The vehicle rampage section did become a staple of many a shooter for, God, what, a fucking decade?
Yep, and nobody could seem to figure out that you need to make your vehicles control good for people to enjoy using them.
Yeah, again, Halo was the first shooter to have good feeling vehicles. I'd argue they're still one of the only ones.
So hey, that's a feather in Bungie's cap.
I mean,
Hey, remember when we were talking about the Warthog in Destiny? That's baffling still.
it
Like,
really is.
anyway.
Now, what's funny about Halo is, I've mentioned before, the PC port came out in 2003.
Yep.
You know what else came out in 2003?
What else came out in 2000?
Unreal Tournament 2003.
Ah, well, there you go.
Unreal Tournament 2003 is okay. Unreal Tournament 2004 is much better in every regard. The thing about UT 2003 is that one of the things it was criticized for was not having vehicles, because Halo had been out for 2 years on console, and, you know, Halo's PC port was right around the corner, and Epic and Digital Extremes come out with UT 2003, and they're like, hey look, new Unreal Tournament. And people are like, I mean, Halo's coming out to PC, it's got those vehicles. And I played a lot of Halo multiplayer on PC when it arrived. It was very fun. It was the first Halo to actually have online multiplayer, because Halo 2 wouldn't come out on Xbox till the next year. The thing about Unreal Tournament 2003 not having vehicles is that then Epic stepped in and corrected that complaint, let's say. UT 2004, again, my most favorite game of all time, has vehicles. They're a tad familiar. So in Halo, you have, let's say, the Warthog. A 3-person light assault vehicle with a, you know, weaponless driver, a side gunner, and a rear turret. In UT 2004, you have the Hellbender, which is a light assault jeep with 3 positions for a gunnerless, weaponless driver, a side gunner, and a rear turret. Now, the side gunner in the Hellbender does have a turret of their own, and it's not a machine gun, is a Skymine launcher, which fires blobs of energy that do a little bit of damage. The rear gunner is a dual-linked shock turret that can be charged up for extra power. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And functionally, like, serves relatively the same purpose, right? Like, reach out and touch someone at long range. The other one's more for the stuff that gets closest to the vehicle. It's, you know, it works.
So, we're in Ghosts. Ghosts are single-person Covenant light assault vehicles that hover and have twin plasma cannons. The Manta in Unreal Tournament 2004 is a... fuck you. Light assault hovercraft that hovers, hence the name, that has twin-linked plasma cannon. The difference is that the Manta can jump, because it's held aloft not by anti-gravity magic, but by 2 turbofans on the side. And the turbofans can go into high gear and propel upward. And then while you're upward, it can also propel downward. So you can squish someone as you're driving over them, or decapitate them.
It's good fun.
It's very good fun. Halo has the Banshee, single-person aerial assault craft with twin-linked plasma guns and a giant arcing artillery bomb as a secondary fire. Unreal Tournament 2004 has the Raptor, a single-person aerial assault vehicle which boasts an arsenal of twin-linked plasma cannons and a secondary fire that is actually a lock-on missile that can lock on to other Raptors or Mantas. That's cool.
So there's a pattern here though, right? Which is worth pointing out because it's relevant to Halo 1, which is they're taking things that worked in another game, right? The vehicles of Halo, and they're building on them to make them more interesting, or, more fun to use, or more diverse, right?
Yeah, they certainly added new things to them. More fun to use is arguable. UT 2004's vehicle physics are a little not great, unfortunately.
It's subjective, but the objective part of the whole thing is that they are building upon them. They're not just like doing the thing, and they're also not doing the thing worse, right?
No. Well, the
Which
vehicle
might-
physics, again.
Yeah, again, subjective. The point is that they're not like, they're at least learning from the other things that came before them, right?
Yeah.
Halo,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, we've mentioned before that Halo, well, I have mentioned before, Halo seems to fail to draw on common wisdom in a lot of aspects
Yeah.
that are baffling. It's like we talked about like the unbroken narrative stuff from Half-Life 1 and how they try to ape that, but then they break it up. There's a lot of stuff that they could have done that had been done before that they could have built upon or done better, and they kind of either just did or didn't, like just did as is or didn't do.
Yeah. Also, I did forget to mention the Goliath, which is a tank with a machine gun that's a counterpart to the Scorpion. Which is interesting because UT 2004 has its own stable of unique vehicles, such as the Scorpion. Which is another light assault Jeep that actually, here, it's difficult to explain in words, so I'll just use this clip. It shoots this plasma ribbon that latches onto things and wraps around them, and it's very cool. It also has
like
these things.
Oh, I love those.
What the
I love
fuck?
the noise. Yep.
So speaking of decapitating people with your vehicle,
Good clean fun.
yeah, good clean cuts too.
Final target neutralized. Let's get out of here.
Let's find a ride and get to the captain.
No, that'll take too long.
You have a better idea?
There's a teleportation grid that runs throughout Halo. That's how the monitor moves about so quickly. I learned how to tap into the grid when I was in the control center. Unfortunately, each jump requires a rather consequential expenditure of energy.
Something tells me I'm not gonna like this.
But I'm pretty sure I can pull it from your suit without permanently damaging your genes. Needless to say, I think we should only try this once.